How did you manage to communicate better? Like, I'm sure as all of us, we've had situations where, like Mistaken was just saying, where we left some stuff out, or we might have said or tiptoed through a topic or issue that we had, but there was a lot more that we pushed to the side and we didn't communicate. What was something, or what was like a tool that helped you get your true feelings out to communicate how you truly felt so it could be addressed?
I
Paradise.
Oh, okay.
My
I'm sorry.
fault. I couldn't hear you, Mistaken. My fault.
No, it's fine. I know I mentioned it earlier. I had to learn it. And a lot of people, even in the comments, they were like, oh, so she had to learn. Yes, because when you are around your peers, right, you're watching them go through relationship stuff, and not even your peers, just in your environment, you're picking up on how other people talk to other people, and you think that that's okay until somebody shows you differently. So I have never experienced like my dad and my mom like yelling at each other and stuff like that. But my dad and my mom were not my only forms of influence on me when it came to relationships. And so I picked up the good behaviors, the bad behaviors. I was just a product of my environment. What made me actually want to learn, and this is going to sound crazy, it was the emotional attachment and the respect and infatuation I had for a man. So when he started to take his time and, like basically tell me, you don't you know it's cool, right? Like you can calm down. And it kind of made me feel bad. Like he was noticing I was being defensive. He was noticing I was immediately already triggered. He was noticing I was guarded. And when he was noticing those things, it made me feel bad. It made me feel guilty because it was very fresh. It was very new. And I was liking him. And so that's what made me want to learn. And once he started implementing that and acknowledging that, I was like, yeah, I have to do better.
Do you remember like the first, and this for Paradise again, do you remember the first conversation that you maybe saw take place that was like awkward and you was like, damn, they really had that conversation? Like, something that may be hard to talk about, or something that would be deemed
From me
tough.
seeing other people do it.
I mean, either not necessarily you having that discussion, or something that you said, I have to learn how to do that, because
No,
that
I
was a tough discussion.
I never saw that. And I can say because my parents didn't argue, they didn't fight in front of us. That wasn't like something conflict resolution between my parents. I never saw it. They kept us in a child's place. Whatever was going on between them was going on between them. Other people who were sporadic with their behavior that was around my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, whatever they had going on, if it escalated, adults intervened for whatever reason. But I've never seen people sit at a round table or a couple sit and just simply have a hard discussion amongst each other or address things, because in my community, people typically kept their relationship business to themselves. That's just what it was. It took for me, again, with my high school sweetheart, we were kids. He was very much so a different guy, just different all the way around. Even the caliber of man he is today, I'm very proud of him. And the way that I interacted with him was always a specialized case. But it wasn't until I got older that I realized, after having a very good experience with a male in college, that the way that I had been interacting with my high school sweetheart should have been the way that I was interacting with me and after him as well. It should have been the way that I curated all my relationships, which is why after I left the situation in college and I moved to Texas, that's what I got, right? Like, so I was able to understand that dynamic, re implement it, and go back to it, because I also learned bad behaviors from my environment, because people are not doing the things that we know them to used to do. They don't talk about their relationships unless they're bashing their partner, or they're venting, or they're telling you something that they're getting ready to do together that they want praise for, such as buying a house or getting married. Everything else is swept under the rug.
Mistaken.
I would say that I've learned and am still learning. I think it's a continual journey to self improvement and in communication. But I would say that I learned to improve my communication better from my husband in a way that he communicated to me. As he began to develop his communication skills with me, it is by, I guess, by design or what have you, it elevated my communication skills with him. And I think a lot of times when we are communicating with each other, it's a mirrored communication. So if his voice raises, I automatically start getting hyped too. You know, if I feel like the tone in which he's saying something is very harsh, then I typically came back in that same tone or manner until we begin to have conversations. Like I might feel like I'm taking something some way and he's taking the other. I realize that I can't communicate with him the same way that he communicates with me. So he may communicate with his boys or talking to his boys a certain way, and he's just used to being direct and da da da. But when he talks to me like that, it makes me feel some kind of way. And so then I communicate back in that same way, but he'll receive that as being disrespectful. And I'm like, well, like that's the way you said it to me. Why is it disrespectful? Now you see how I feel, right? But I had to mature in that area to be more mindful of tone and delivery. But I also had to explain to him that tone and delivery matters to me. So as he began to actively work on that, because the goal is to get to the crux of what the issue is and what the resolution is going to be. But if tone and delivery is going to be something that prevents us from moving forward, we both acknowledged that we needed to work on it, and we actively tried to work on it. And so it got better. I think the other thing, I had wrote this down that stuck out to me with what Paris said about her not actually seeing like her parents or whatever ever argue, and that was kept behind closed doors. I think back in the day, I think that was the way things were done. But I think nowadays, I think it's critical and very important for your children to see how, as adults, especially as your parents in an environment, to see how they resolve conflict. Depending on what the topic of discussion is. Some stuff is for a kid's place, but some things I think is very important for your children to see, not only conflict resolution, but also apologizing. Like if I'm wrong, there are certain things that like we'll get into it about, our kids have seen, but they've also seen the follow-up where I would come and say, you know what, after thinking about that, you were right. I apologize for doing whatever the specific transgression was that I did on my end, taking responsibility and ownership for that. It was very important for me, for my kids to see what that looks like. So not just the arguing, but also the resolve, the resolution, and the apology that comes with it if either one of us was out of line. My husband too, if he's wrong, he'll come back and be like, you know what, I give it up. You were right. Like my bad. I apologize. So I think it's important for our children, especially now, which y'all saying with like social media, they're getting all of these negative images of how people communicate. But if you as a husband and wife and your kids see that, they're seeing it practice in real time. They're seeing what that looks like in real time. So it's definitely important for that to occur. But like kind of like what I said, I learned to get better with communication through active communication and from my husband.
Layla is working.
Yep, we back.
Okay, perfect.
Hello.
All right. So you wanna touch on the last topic, the trigger topic, and then we'll hop
Yeah.
into super chats.
Yeah, so in my opinion, I think what triggers women is just the way men think in general. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm saying that in the sense of women, we are far more emotional than men. Men kind of think 1, 2, 3, and we're thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So basically, and hearing it both ways, men have to adjust, like overly adjust themselves in order not to trigger a woman. Like a woman could be on her menstrual cycle and the pen drops on the floor, she's triggered. A woman can be having a bad day at work and one of the coworkers pissed her off, she's triggered. Like we are very feeling and emotional beings. And part of that is important when it comes down to the nurture part of being a woman. We have to be emotional. We have to be empathetic. We have to be feeling. But men are more, in my opinion, straightforward with their emotions. They feel something, they speak on it. They don't feel anything, they don't say anything about it. But women will sit here and overthink, like, wow, he's quiet today. Why is he so quiet? And another thing that I realize is guys, they process things differently. Sometimes they get quiet. It could have been something at work. It could be something going on with family. They have to figure it out in their heads as to not just their feelings, but what comes next. What are we going to do from here? Whereas a woman, we're sitting here like, oh, they must have been talking to someone else. Oh, they're mad at me. There must be something wrong with me. And I think that goes hand in hand with what Clout was saying and even what Coach K was saying about just women will overthink it. And instead of sitting here relaxing, like, okay, he'll talk to me when he's ready, we try to force them to answer us and jump when we say to. And I feel like it isn't fair. So when it comes down to what triggers women, I just think the way men deal with emotions and things in general triggers a woman. Of course, what Paradise was saying, when you get that okay after sending 2 paragraphs, but those 2 paragraphs came from you expressing your feelings. They're not in that feeling type of energy all the time. And we tend to be in it a lot more than them. So that okay, it's like, I don't want to deal with this right now. Or she's overthinking, or here you go again with whatever it is. And I do feel like, yeah, for men, they do have to, understand we are feeling, we do have these emotions. So, the whole thing as far as tones and the way you say things and all that, it's relevant. But I also feel like women, we need to sometimes just step back and realize when we're doing too much. I've had I've had partners in the past tell me, like, here you go again, with all your feelings and your emotions. And even though all of them are valid, it's the timing, it's the way I'm saying it, because sometimes we're not straightforward. Like, you did this to bother me. Sometimes I feel like women will sit here and say all the little details that led to us being bothered instead of just getting to the point as to what's bothering you so we could fix it. So I think on both sides, like, communication needs to improve. But what triggers a woman is, I feel like, depending on the day, the time of the month, the way the weather is, maybe it just really depends on any situation. I don't think there's one specific thing men do. I think it's really depending where that woman's feelings are in that moment.
Can I add one thing? I think that would help communication is just stop trying to win. No one's winning. We're both here. You like this person, you love this person, right? Why are you trying to win? That's it.
That's a fact. That's a
I
fact.
will also add, stop fighting your partner, fight the problem. You're there together. When you got 2 minds to think together to be as one, right? Like, the problem is there between the 2 of you, right? But just because that problem bothers you doesn't mean that they are your punching bag.